Hi, friend. Come on in. We'll just start gathering here. So happy to be with you today. I think it's so important to gather as the Scorpio season's getting underway, just to ride together through this time. Um, Wonderful to have those of you in the room, and then there'll be a number of listening later. And big love and hellos to you as well whenever you choose to listen. Um, So I'm just gonna browse through for a second and see sweet faces. Oh, hello. I'm not gonna say names, but I'm very happy. New faces and dear old friends. I'm so grateful for that. I always love seeing the names coming through and being like, "Oh, I don't know this friend," and yet, so welcome everyone. And also there's such a wide range of those of you that some know astrology like the back of their hand, and there's all kinds of experience, and some of you are brand new, and all of that is okay. All of that is absolutely okay. So, um, I tell you what, as we're getting underway, first of all, why don't we go ahead? I'll mute everyone for now. Um, and as we're getting underway, because I very much hope that this is like a conversation with with chat, and that you're asking questions and that you're sharing observations. So why don't we just start by letting us know where you are from? Just go ahead in the chat. Let's get our global community going here and see where we're all showing up from. Rhode Island, yes, okay. Michigan, Seattle. Whoa, we just covered like the globe. Okay, the United States, beautiful. Oh, wow. Oh, fun. Isn't that fun? I never tire of it. I never tire of seeing where people are from. Um, and then also, just to sort of get us underway, why don't, if you know, why don't you put in the chat if you have any Scorpio in your chart? Like, are you a sun in Scorpio? Are you a moon in Scorpio? And only, if you don't know, that's okay. But let's just get the Scorpio in the room here. Scorpio moon, Scorpio rising. Ooh boy, we've got some goodness here. Yeah, sun and moon. Beautiful. Mm. Okay, Moon, Neptune, Jupiter, Scorpio. Okay. It's funny. I am so drawn to Scorpio. Like, I love this month so much because it feels like such a month of transformation. It feels like such a month where healing is possible and where we're not messing around. We're going to dive deep. I don't have much Scorpio in my chart, interestingly, but I really do love the deep dive. I guess you could say I have Mercury in the eighth house. So Mercury is the messenger, and the eighth house wants to talk about the deep things, right? So that is the case. But I do love this month for its silence, its invitation, its depth. Uh, it's like getting to the heart of the matter. When we're feeling obstructed, or when we're feeling like, I don't know how I'm going to move through this. The Scorpio time actually is a time when we can start to name it and do the like messy work. We're not going to skim above anything. It's going to be in our face. Which are the obstruction, the lack of freedom, the control, whatever. It's going to be right front and center, and there is something frankly relieving about it. When everything goes awry, or when something comes into focus about what we have to attend to. So, because we have this sweet gathering, let's together begin this invocation. Okay, so let's together just write a few words in the chat about how you understand Scorpio. So they can just be a word, they can be a phrase. Like, through our words in the chat, let's just start to presence the energy of Scorpio, okay? Deep, dark, beautiful, Laura. Depth, tenacity, fiery water, yes. Powerful, intense, yes. I mean, just even feel warrior, unearthing, beautiful, Rebecca. Scary. Scary. Yeah, there's something there about that. Intense, loyal, passionate. Yes. Transformative, sexy. Yes. Yes. Unleashed. Beautiful word. Beautiful word. Real. I love that. Scorpio wants nothing. It does not want anything but real. Secretive or private. Deep story. Yeah. I would say that Scorpio season is a time when we can really land in one another's deep stories, not superficial stories, not masks, but like, what is your deepest story? Yeah, don't look at me. Scorpio has that guardedness. So during the Scorpio season, how can we shed the armor? How can we peek out? How can we be willing to be seen more? Yeah. Passionate. This is a nice list. And one of the things, willing to kill, yes. And you know what? I mean, that's important to say. It's important to say because there is incredible power in Scorpio. And the question is, how are you going to wield it? How are you going to use it? Are you going to use your power in selfish ways, in little ways? Or are you going to channel it for the good of all of us? And that's really the biggest journey with Scorpio, is like from the private, intense, you hurt me, I'll hurt you, attack, jealousy, betrayal. How do we grow that energy? And believe me, it is not through repressing it. And it's not through ignoring it. And it's not through belittling it and going like, oh, why can't I stop being so jealous? It's actually through tending to it, like with a mother's love. It's actually through listening to it. It's actually through shining a light on it and sitting with it. It's not through killing it. It's not about squashing the little self. Yeah. Makes friends with what goes bump in the night. That's beautiful. Okay. So my feeling about this gathering together, some of you are only coming for one, most of you are coming for three, is that the threeness gives us a real interesting window or an opportunity, because Scorpio knocks at the door, which it did yesterday, and it entered. So yesterday we got underway with Scorpio and we're like, oh, hello, Scorpio, right? And so that's what we're going to be talking about, the oh, hello, Scorpio today. But then we're going to talk again on November 7th, which is, we're going to talk in the thick of it. So how are we doing with the wrestling? How are we doing with the struggle? How are we doing with the overcoming, and so we'll talk in the middle of it. And then right at the end, where there's a kind of synthesis. And for those of you that know astrology a little bit, you know that there are transits, and that means the planets in the heavens are affecting our birth chart. And a transit, when it hits 3 times, does exactly that. It introduces itself and says, whoa, I'm scary, or, oh, I have an opportunity for you. Then you dance with that energy, and then you integrate that energy. So the fact that we get to meet all 3 times is significant, and we are going to go on a journey. This morning in the moon note that I wrote, I used 3 words, and we're going to come back to it later today. Those 3 words are the keynotes for Scorpio: test, trial, triumph. And this is the journey of Scorpio in a lifetime, in a given day, And so today we're going to really hone in on the test. We're going to hone in on the test. And I will say to you, I don't conceive of these sessions so much as like, I'm going to learn tons and tons of facts about astrology. You will, but more of an experiential thing, more of even the fact that you chose to gather at this time on this day, saying, let's deepen into Scorpio. You are choosing to feel it and embrace it and be in it in a way that's going to wake you up to the whole month. And what I really want is for us to be carrying certain questions through the month. And there are certain Scorpio questions like, What am I ready to release? What am I ready to surrender? What in me is ready to die? How could I relinquish control in a certain area? Yeah. So this time together is a time to ask questions and to live in them. And we sort of will get to check in along the way. Yeah. And of course, I'll read you poetry. And of course, I'll ask you questions, and I'll show you, and we'll work with the chart. So I really want to say to you, like, whatever it takes for this month to propel us forward, whatever it takes to feel more fully alive. Scorpio wants us to feel fully alive by addressing what obstructs the flow. Yeah. But sometimes I think about the warrior energy and I'm like, okay, yes, the fight, yes, the warrior, but there's also something that is so, it's a negative polarity. It's a feminine sign. It's a deep internal energy where we are like shining a flashlight into the depths of ourselves. And it's not always about conquering something. It's about like exhaling and releasing something so that we can grow. That something that we've held on to too long. Like, how can I let go of this? Yeah. All right. So just for my own sake, I'm going to read you a poem because that always lands me right solidly with you. And I've chosen several poems to read today that all are just feel deeply, deeply Scorpio to me. And the first one is a familiar one. It's by David White, but the title itself is Scorpio. It's called Sweet Darkness. Listen, when your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own. There you can be sure you're not beyond love. The dark will be your home tonight. The night will give you horizon further than you can see. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Give up all other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. That's Scorpio, friends. That's Scorpio. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Scorpio can be like imprisoning, or it can be ultimate liberation. Yeah. The world was made to be free in. The dark will be your home tonight. You know, how does it feel when the dark is comforting? Yeah. This is called Sweet Darkness, and it's by David White. How does it feel to be in the dark and to surrender to the dark, and even to surrender to your own fears in a way, like to just like unclench somehow and sit with what scares you and let every part of your body soften and release so that you're not in the grip of battle. The biggest word that I am working with Scorpio is surrender, because we get in these fights with ourselves. We get in these fights inside, and we get in these fights outside, and we beat ourselves inside. We beat ourselves up inside, and we beat ourselves up outside. And there's something about like falling to our knees with Scorpio. And there's something about saying, I need to grow. I need to grow. So what do I need to let go of so that I can just, what do I need to shed? You know, the two planets that are most connected to Scorpio are Mars and Pluto. And Pluto is so much about shedding and letting go and ending cycles that don't serve you. So this whole thing about anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. You know, even if there's a part of yourself that doesn't bring you alive, that's too small for you. That can, you know, it can be your very self that's too small for you that you need to outgrow, right? So it's this shedding. What can I leave? How can I choose differently? Yeah. What is preventing your fullest experience of freedom? Like, if you have a notebook, you know, with you, it's just like, even as I ask these questions, you might just jot down a few things. It's like, well, what is at this moment preventing me from feeling free? It's a big question. But what does freedom feel like, and what is obstructing that freedom? There's another thing that I want to say about Scorpio, which is I've been thinking about Scorpio in terms of luminosity. Because if we dare to go into the dark, and we really dare to do the work in the dark, I believe that we become luminous. And luminous, there's a definition of luminous that I love. It actually has to do with planets, and it's celestial objects. And in luminosity, it's the intrinsic brightness of a celestial object, as distinct from its brightness diminished by distance. So luminosity is about being. Brightness is about appearance. Luminosity is about, like, what happens when let's just say a planet evolves over time. It gets brighter and brighter. Let's say what happens when we evolve over time. We become luminous. And there's this I just love this idea of being luminous in the dark. Like, the dark requires that we grow the light from within. The light that emerges from our being. The light that emerges from the need to finally outshine our closures, the need to finally outshine the parts of us that feel dead to us, or feel clenched, or feel old, or feel worn. Yeah. Isn't that, I mean, I would love for you to just brew about that word, luminosity. It's a word that I'm going to probably be working with all year long in 2022. Because it's different than what you put out. The light comes from within. And Scorpio ultimately is is a sign of light. It's the greatest sign of light, even though it rules the darkness. Because if you are willing to sit in and face and live with and breathe and acknowledge and wrestle with the dark, you emerge into the greatest dawn, into the greatest light. So let's take a peek just for a moment at the chart of the day, just because I always like to do that. And here is the chart of the day. And this is when we started at 11 a.m. in Pacific time. And I just want to point out that we just moved into Scorpio, right? Here's our 0 degrees Scorpio, the sun. We just crossed the threshold. And we started at least in Pacific time in Los Angeles, with Sagittarius rising, which is the seeker. And we have Venus, the planet of beauty and love, right there on the rising sign, right there on the ascendant. It's this great sign of, let me expand my understanding. I would say this, let me tell a new story about my life. Yeah. Let me seek, and Sagittarius is the sign of freedom. Sagittarius is one of the greatest signs of freedom. So set me free, right? And then the moon's in Gemini. So that's perfect because guess what we're going to do? We're asking questions. We're asking questions about Gemini. We're collecting about Scorpio. We're perhaps collecting a few facts, but mostly we're being really, really curious about Scorpio. This is where beginner's mind is just so important with astrology, is like, you can come back to the beginning 10,000 times and say, what's Scorpio about anyway? What does it mean to me? Yes, I can say, warrior am I, and from the battle I emerge triumphant, but how does that land in my body? What does that mean? How am I going to emerge triumphant? What is triumph anyway? You have to ask yourself these questions. What am I, and when we start to feel it in our body too, of course, Scorpio rules the reproductive system, and it rules like some of the eliminative system too. So it's like that whole part of the body. What do I want to generate? What do I want to create? And what do I want to get rid of? I mean, those are really Scorpio questions. So, what I would be careful about today looking at this chart is I would be careful about, are there too many words? Are we stopping to drop in and quiet the mind? And are we asking the most essential question? You know how when you're in a body work session, or you're in a therapy session or something, all you really need is one moment out of the entire hour where you go, oh, or where your body changes or your breath changes. At least that's the case for me. All I really need is like, oh, I'm softer, or, oh, that felt like relief to say that, or, oh, I never thought about it that way. That's all we need, is like one piece like that to carry with us. And so I want to make sure as we're talking today that you ask yourself the most essential question. I think one of the most essential questions for me with Scorpio is, where am I controlling something that I do not need to control? Where am I trying to control something that I do not need to control? Where am I gripping? Where am I holding? Where am I gritting my teeth and my jaw just to make this happen? And how can I exhale and trust something greater than myself? Yeah. I mean, maybe you can just feel that right now. Is there an area of your life? And we're going to actually look at this in our charts. And, hopefully all of you have your chart. And if you don't, I'm going to get it for you. But, what we're going to look at is what area of the chart is Scorpio ruling. And we're going to look at what area. So we're going to say, do I have a tendency to control in this area? Do I have a tendency to battle in this area? And how can I give myself a break here? How can I release here? Yeah. So by the way, I'm just going to show you right now, just in case for those of you that are new, what we're going to be looking at when we look at your chart is we're going to be looking at, here's the symbol for Scorpio right there. And we're going to look at what area Scorpio rules in your chart. So for some of you, it's going to rule just one area. And for some of you, it's going to rule two. Do you see how Scorpio is here and here? And so if you see in the circle how it's divided up into 12 sections, in this case, Scorpio rules the 11th house and Scorpio rules the 12th house. Let's say Scorpio's down here, then it rules the 3rd house. Or if it's right here, it rules the 4th house. So just right now, just mark on your chart, circle the Scorpio in the outer ring of your chart, if you can. And also circle where Mars is in your chart, the red planet, because that's gonna be important soon. Okay, so we'll come back to that. So any questions so far, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I love to, as we go, I'm happy to address as we go. So as I said, or should we circle Pluto? Yes, Michelle, you can circle Pluto as well. Yes, I suspect I'm going to get more to Pluto in our second class together, but circle Pluto too, because Pluto is deeply key to what we're doing here. Pluto is, Scorpio is the underworld. Pluto is the god of the underworld. If Scorpio, is the area where we need to heal, Pluto is the healer through the elimination of toxicity. Okay. So I also wanted to just, by the way, I just wanted to say to you about the chart. I'm not going to go back to it, but I wanted to say to you, not only are we going through this whole month of Scorpio, but during the second 2 weeks of the month of Scorpio, Mars is in Scorpio and Mercury is in Scorpio as well. So talk about the power of words. Talk about like communicating with tenacity and strength. Talk about words that can transform. So we're gonna have this little tiny collection or stellium of the Sun, Mars, and Mercury all in Scorpio for the second half of the month together. So that's significant. And Mars, of course, loves to be in Scorpio because it rules Scorpio and it says, let's get to work and do the healing we need to do. So I want again to return to the 3 words: test, trial, triumph. Those are key words given by Alice Bailey. And then she also gives 3 other words, which are struggle, strength, and Sagittarian attitudes. Struggle, strength, and Sagittarian attitudes. So you can see how these line up. We have the test, which we're in the struggle of the test. It either comes at us from the outside, we lose a job, we break up, there's a death in the family, like the test comes and we are in this heightened moment of test and struggle. And trying to adjust the body, trying to adjust at a physical, emotional, and mental level, trying to adjust to loss, trying to adjust to breaks, fractures, trying to adjust to depression, whatever it is. There's the test and there's the struggle. Then we move into the trial, which is a much longer period of time often, which is where we're building our strength, right? So there's again the resonance between the trial and the strength. So during the trial, look, in test, trial, triumph, that can be, like I said, it can be a lifetime. So trial can be years and years and years of your life, or it can be a series of weeks as you are strengthening something in yourself to overcome something in yourself. So you are on trial. You're on trial, and the question is, can you strengthen the muscle you need to strengthen? So can you strengthen your patience? Can you strengthen your self-forgiveness? Can you strengthen your compassion? Can you strengthen your ability to pause or to release? What needs to be strengthened in you, And the trial is that, guess what? A bunch of the times you're not going to succeed. You're like, I'm trying, and, I'm strengthening, and then I'm falling back. And so it's the middle territory. But then that last word, triumph, and Sagittarian attitudes are connected as well, because basically when we triumph in Scorpio, the triumph is 2 things. The triumph is the choice to make the decisions that benefit humanity, like the choice to bring that part of yourself forward that can help others. But the triumph is also trusting that you're not alone. Trust is such a huge word with Scorpio. It's trusting that you're not alone. It's falling to your knees and letting the deepest, most courageous surrender so that you're available to be a vessel. And that's where the Sagittarian attitudes comes in, because then Sagittarius says, I'm the one-pointed disciple, boom, and I'm headed towards my next horizon and my next goal. Yes, and Mandy, the middle territory. I think that to truly, most of us are in the middle territory. Sometimes, of course, we're in the shock of something happening, or the shock of a loss, but then we quickly enter the middle territory. And if we think about Pluto as one of the rulers of Scorpio, we could even say that Pluto has a trio of similar to these. We could say that Pluto disrupts our lives in some way. It disrupts the outer world. It sends us into the underworld. And in fact, there's this amazing Sumerian myth about Inanna. I don't know if any of you have ever heard about it, but Inanna is sent into the underworld. She's a queen, and she's sent into the underworld. And at every gate, she has to give something up that defines who she is. So at the first gate, she has to give up her crown. And then at the second gate, she gives up her jewels. And then she surrenders and surrenders and surrenders. And she eventually gives up her clothing, and she ends up naked and, get this, hung on a meat hook, right? Talk about the underworld, right? So she is in this deep, deep, deep level of hell and surrender and letting go and shedding, and that is Pluto, right? But the first level of Pluto, but then she gets to go up and resume her queendom after having surrendered. But the first level of Pluto is always, you're sent into the underworld, and then you're in a period of not knowing, and that also is a quality of the trial. That's a quality of the struggle, is the not knowing. You cannot control it. I think I'm realizing that I always feel this way, and I've said this many times when I teach, but I'm thinking about it in a new way. I always feel this way when I fly. Instead of going into the underworld, I'm going into the upper world, which I'm completely out of control. I don't know if the plane's going to land or not. And, I'm in the not knowing, but you're trying to be in the not knowing, and you're trying to deal with everything that comes up, and you're trying to make the right choices, right? But then after you're in the struggle and you're in the trial, then you move with Pluto, you move into the authenticity that occurs when the soul recommits itself to its mission. So Pluto is ultimately such a planet of strength and power. So sometimes I'll talk to clients who have Pluto square the sun, let's say, in their transit, and they are going through a total stripping away, or Pluto opposite the sun, or Pluto on the sun. They're going through a complete painful surrender. And yet the final hit of it is this total empowerment and rededication or remembering of the mission. So it's, I've said this many times, planets are certainly not here to give us a bad day. Pluto is intense. It's gonna heal you. It's gonna get the toxicity out. It's gonna help you purge, but it's ultimately to clear the way for your most beautiful healing and empowerment. Yeah. So, if you're a Scorpio sun or a Scorpio moon or a Scorpio rising, this is your life. This is your life, and that's okay, right? Yes, beautiful, Liz. The irony is surrender leads to freedom, if you can trust it. It's absolutely, absolutely true. So, today we can also look at where we're tested and where we might eventually triumph. And Pluto will help us with detachments, and Mars will help us transform desire to aspiration. And we'll talk more about that. But let's say better yet, Mars will give us the energy we need to make the effort. Yeah. Good. So, another poem. Okay. And this is a very powerful and somewhat difficult to, it's an intense poem. Um, and it's, again, it's by Jan Richardson. She wrote a book called The Cure for Sorrow. It was right after she had lost her husband unexpectedly in a surgery. And so this is an intense poem about that loss, but I want you to feel into this poem as anything, any news that you have received or not received, any breakdown, any shocking reorientation, any depression that is knocked. I want you to hear it. It doesn't have to be at this heightened level, right? But this is Scorpio in action. And it's called Blessing for Getting the News. I don't know how it will be for you. For me, when the news came, when it sat down across from me in the waiting room at 4 a.m., wearing scrubs and speaking words awful and full of strangeness, it came with a humming in my head, an endless echoing, buzzing that would never entirely leave. I can hardly tell you the words the news used. Others would piece that together for me later, but I can tell you that in the humming, a whole other conversation was happening. In that conversation, I remember wanting to appear calm while the world was beginning the rending from which it would never return. In that conversation, I remember wanting to be the wife who could withstand what the news was saying to me, even as I could hardly hear it. In that conversation, I remember wanting to ask if someone could please get me a blanket already because I was shaking so hard I thought I would shatter. I do not know how it will be for you, but when the news comes, may it be attended by every grace, including the ones you will not be able to see now. When the news comes, may there be hands to enfold and bless, even when you cannot receive their blessing now. When the news comes, may the humming in your head give way to song, even if it will be long and long before you can hear it, before you can comprehend the love that latched onto you in the rending, the love that bound itself to you even as it began its leaving and has never let you go. Yeah, there's something so profound about that poem. And I love that she says, I don't know how it will be for you. We don't know how it is for one another. But I'll tell you what, the people that go and sit with, with others in the middle of a tragedy, the people that are called to be on suicide hotlines, the people that can sit still and listen in the darkness with somebody, they all have Scorpio. Yeah. Or they all have strong eighth houses. I mean, and nothing needs to be said either, right? In fact, when you're sitting in a situation like that, just holding, I don't know how it is for you, is the balm that is needed. And even holding that for ourselves somehow. I don't know how it is for me. Like, how is it for me? What do I need? I need a blanket. Like listening to the body. And then, of course, there's something about when the news comes, may the humming in your head give way to song, even if it will be long and long before you can hear it, before you can comprehend the love that latched onto you in the rending, the love that bound itself to you even as it began its leaving and has never let you go. Yeah. There's something about the image of the rending brings us to our knees. It opens our arms. We don't know. And only in that position do we feel the love on our face. Do we feel the sun on our face? Do we feel and make way for the love to come in? Can you, if there's any words that you have around this, like, share them. If it feels resonant to you, if you can feel what I'm talking about. Because I think it's really key. There's something about the letting go. There's that Mary Oliver poem called The Settlement, where she just says, I'm about ready to do it. I'm about ready to forgive you for everything. I'm dark past. I'm about ready to forgive you for everything. And Scorpio wants to force it or control it or make it happen or not have the loss, not have the loss, not have the loss. But when it finally trusts that something larger is at work, that is the moment of the deepest and truest love. Yeah. That's what I realized not long after my mom passed, says Liz, letting the love in after loss, buoyed by love when you feel like drowning. Yes. I felt the same after my dad's death. It really touched me deeply to think of the unseen helpers who were there for my family during a loss. Yes. Okay, Stacy, you're prepping your father for hospice this week. And I will say, Scorpio rules death and it rules rebirth. And one of the things on the Scorpio journey that we have a long way to go in with humanity is how we usher people from one side to the other. And Scorpios are going to be part of the evolution of death and dying, and how we can do that with greater grace and presence and softness and love and discernment. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna read you one more poem, which which is as heavy. It's as intense, but together they make a piece, and together that leads us into our charts. Okay, so because I think there's something really interesting about this love piece and this surrender piece and this struggle piece. They're all dancing together. So this one, and particularly the end of this one, is so powerful. But I'm just, it's like I'm telling you a couple stories to break your heart, and these poems are about breaking your heart in a way, because we get disoriented, we get confused about what's important, and then suddenly our heart breaks and we remember. And the question is, can we remember that without that heightened moment? Can we try to remember that more often? Okay, it's called Lead by Mary Oliver. Here is a story to break your heart. Are you willing? This winter, the loons came to our harbor and died one by one of nothing we could see. A friend told me of one on the shore that lifted its head and opened the elegant beak and cried out in the long, sweet savoring of its life, which, if you have heard it, you know is a sacred thing. for which, if you have not heard it, you had better hurry to where they still sing. And believe me, tell no one just where it is. The next morning, this loon, speckled and iridescent, and with a plan to fly home to some hidden lake, was dead on the shore. I tell you this to break your heart, by which I mean only that it break open and never close again. Yeah, those last lines are everything. You know, I tell you this to break your heart, by which I mean only that it break open and never close again. Of course, my beloved friend Sophia Diaz will always say, why do we ever close after we're open? It's because opening is so delicious from the closure. Why would we ever choose to close once we've experienced how it is to be in the balm of love? But because we keep loving that feeling of like, this feels so good, right? So what I want to suggest to you is that in your chart, the area that Scorpio is ruling is an area where you can break open and never close again. And it's an area that you might be trying to control, but need to surrender in, right? So let's go ahead and get into it, okay? Let's see. So if you do not have a chart, then also you can privately write to Erin, who is a co-host, and she will send it to you, okay? But if you do have your chart, hallelujah. So Erin is there, and you can privately message her. So here's what I want to do. I'll just bring up, I'm going to bring up a chart of someone that I know is in the class, and I have her chart. Here we go. Hang on. Okay. Yes. So this is Phyllis's chart. Okay. And so I'm just going to use it as an example. So again, find Scorpio in your chart. And in Phyllis's chart, Scorpio rules her third house. And for you, Scorpio may rule your sixth house, or it might rule your seventh house. Find it's on the bottom of the chart, Scorpio is to the left of the house it rules, and on the top of the chart, it's to the right of the house it rules, okay? So hopefully you can find that. And also, of course, pay attention if you're new, where else Scorpio lands. Like Scorpio, just note that there might be other planets in Scorpio. But for now, we're going to keep it really, 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 really simple, because I don't want it to be, I don't want to get the intricacies of the chart in the way of the big question, okay? So what I would like you now, I'm going to bring up the chart of houses. And for those of you that don't know the houses, here is a little chart that tells you what each house means, okay? So the first house has so much to do with, self-assertion, coming forward, new ideas, and so on. The second house has to do with values and money and manifesting beauty. The third house has to do with communication, connection. So you can look to the house that your Scorpio is ruling, all right? And the first thing you might just write in the chat is something like, my test is in the area of. So my test is in the area of career. My test is in the area of relationship. So for Phyllis, we were looking at her test is in the area of how she thinks, how she writes, how she communicates. So just go ahead, and I'll leave that up there. But if you can find that, put it in the chat where you feel that at least you might not even feel it, but according to astrology, Scorpio is ruling an area, and it's saying you've got to pay attention here because there is a wrestling that goes on here. Test, okay, good. In the area of children, in the area of, yes, dreams. My test is in the area of community and solitude. Good. So keep writing them in, and then as you've written that, ask yourself a deeper question. All right, if it's in the area of children, what is the test around that? Or if it's in the area, that same fifth house, if it's in the area of my creativity, what is the test? What am I wrestling with? Am I allowing myself to fully express? Am I wrestling with, am I going to have a child? Am I wrestling with how I relate in the seventh house? So ask a deeper question now. And if it might be two houses, right? So it might be seventh and eighth house. It might be sixth and seventh house. So see it, and if you have a deeper question that you're asking yourself, put that in the chat. Yes, Scorpio can rule two houses, so for sure. So you might be tested in two areas. If Scorpio shows up twice in the outer ring, it rules two houses, okay? Now, also, let's weave in where Mars is, and think, because Mars rules Scorpio along with Pluto, you could also say my struggle or my fight is in the area where Mars is. So you can add that in, all right? China is asking a deeper question here. At the seventh house, what is me, mine, and what is you, yours? How to relate and have boundaries. Yes, that's very good. Rebecca, excellent. I'm wrestling with the deep articulation of my thoughts. Beautiful. My test is self-expression and relationships. So wherever Mars is, realize that that is part of the struggle. And wherever you're identifying the struggle, realize that that is where your heart has to break as well. That is where your heart has to break, and you have to keep it open. So the reason why we're looking at the houses that Scorpio rules is because right now, I'm gonna stop the share of the house for a second. Right now, here we go. Here's the sun, and the sun is, I should have made this more clear too, actually. I should make this more clear for you. So notice right now that the sun is at 0 degrees Scorpio here. The sun, this is where the sun is transiting, and it is in the second house, and it will go into the third house. So you see, Scorpio is splitting these two houses. So for sure, Scorpio rules the third house, but also pay attention to the second house, right? So just know that, like Sharon was mentioning, that her cusp, just like Phyllis's is at 16 degrees Scorpio here. So she's going to have 15 degrees of Scorpio here and 15 degrees of Scorpio here. So let's just say her tests over the next month are in the second house and in the third house, because that's where the sun is shining. So some of you are going to have to back up and look at the house previously, okay? So it's not just the house that Scorpio is ruling here, it's also back here. So add in another house, add in the house before. Yeah. So I just want you to start feeling into the area that the sun is lighting up, right? And if you have planets in Scorpio, the sun is going to light up those planets as well. So for example, the sun is going to light up Mercury in Phyllis's chart, and it's going to light up Neptune in Phyllis's chart. So those planets are also going to be lit up. But again, trying to keep it simple, starting to think about, okay, my test this month is in these areas. Yeah. So I was thinking about my own chart a little bit, and I have Scorpio at the bottom. I have the Scorpio in the 4th house. And I was thinking about, okay, the 4th house is the house of feeling. The 4th house is the house of mothering and being mothered. And there's something about surrendering to the messiness of feeling and surrendering to allowing the mother love in. Do you know? Like each of you, this is never going to be as neat as I would love it to be, which is like, let's fill in the blank. Here we are. My test is here. It's never going to be that simple. You guys now, as we're sitting here together, have to be going like, okay, if the 4th house is the realm of feeling and home and mother, what's coming up? Like I just visited my mother. What came up when I visited my mother? I had some impatience when I visited my mother. So what do I want to address in that? It's like, how can I get out of the grip of that? How can I soften that? How can I break my heart open a little bit around that? And I think one of the most important images for Scorpio is like, where are you holding and where are you gripping and how can you let go and how can you crack your heart open? Does that make sense? I'm going to go back to the chat for a second. Claire's saying, I am wrestling with not abandoning myself in my parenthood. I am wrestling with creative self-expression of my parenthood. That's beautiful, Claire. See, that really feels like something that she can palpably work on, right? Claire, I think Claire has a gazillion planets in Scorpio, so I think also, right? And Sharon says the sun is hitting natal Neptune directly. This will be fun. Okay, Claire, I feel you. Yeah. So the more specific you can get about where you're wrestling, the better. Yeah. Now, when we move into the month of Scorpio, immediately activated are Mars and Pluto, immediately activated in our chart. So again, not worrying about, even the sign that Mars is in, look to the house that Mars is in. And you could say, my fight is around financial issues. My fight in Phyllis's chart is around what I value. My struggle is around, am I, showing up methodically for something? My struggle is around whether I'm growing something that I want to grow, right? So look to where Mars is and see if you can find a question around that or a statement around that as well. And if any of that makes sense to you, where your natal Mars is, because throughout a year, the different planets in our chart are going to be activated depending on what sign we're in. And if we're in Scorpio, Mars and Pluto are activated. Yeah. Questions. Does it make sense? Another question to ask yourself, even outside of the astrological question, is if what obstructs my freedom? Can I name it? Because that's the other thing about Scorpio, is we must name it. Yes. So Matt's saying, could you show us one more time on Phyllis's chart which house Scorpio is ruling? Yes. So yes, I can. And please don't be sorry because it wasn't immediately clear. So for Phyllis, Scorpio does rule her 3rd house because it's right there at the edge of her 3rd house. But The early degrees of Scorpio are falling in her second house. So for Phyllis, it's second and third house. Okay, let's see if I can just open another one to show you another example. Here, Matt, I'll bring up yours. Okay, I happen to have it. So Matt, for you, Scorpio absolutely rules your first house, okay? So it's right at your ascendant, but in your case, you have 3 houses that are covered by Scorpio because Scorpio rules your 12th house, there it is. It rules your first house, there it is. But there are some degrees of Scorpio that are in your 11th house as well. So you have 3 tests. You have 11th house, 12th house, and first house. Okay. Sorry. So yes, I should have made that more clear from the get-go. So Matt, you look at 11th, 12th, and 1st, and now I'm going to put up the house again so that you can see it. There we go. And you can ask yourself some questions. Scorpio rising, like I said, if you have Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, or Scorpio sun, these are big life questions. These are big life themes: trust, death, intimacy, surrender, sexuality, power, right use of power. All of those are the Scorpio themes. Good. I'll leave that up for a second. Matt, I'm going to get there. Okay. So I sort of want to go back and forth with you, right? Because in one way, I absolutely want you to understand where it's coming from in your chart. But in a bigger theme, I want you to ask I just want you to ask the Scorpio questions. I just want you to say to yourself, what do I think is the present test in my life? Like what is the test that I'm on trial? Where am I on trial? Just even ask it outside of your chart. Where am I on trial? What test is front and center in my life? What am I trying to overcome? Am I wrestling with jealousy? Am I wrestling with patience? Am I wrestling with depression? Am I wrestling with self-worth? Am I wrestling with insecurity? Like what's front and center? And what's the most loving thing that I could say to the self that is wrestling if my heart were cracked open and I was speaking from that place? Another big question: where can I surrender excessive control? What has outlived its time? What pattern in my life has outlived its time? Here's another really interesting Scorpio question. What have you considered taboo in your life? And how can you restore it to sacredness? What have you said, ooh, that's not okay? Or, oh, I couldn't go there. Or, oh, I would never allow myself to do that. Or, ooh, this is a terrible, this is a thing that I'm ashamed about that I can't speak about. But how can we restore it to sacredness? How can we bring it into the light of day where it can be healed? Rosaline says, I'm wrestling with sense of self and vulnerability, being open with people. Scorpio in the first house, Mars in the third. Yeah, very good. Very good. I also want to plant one more seed. I want to plant a seed about desire, and I want to plant a seed about jealousy. So the first thing I want to say in terms of jealousy is pay attention to where you're jealous. Don't judge your jealousy. Pay attention to where you feel jealous and let it point you in the direction of wanting all powers of attainment to go to that area. Do you know? Like jealousy is just a beautiful wake up call of like, I want that. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. Give yourself permission, right? Jealousy in the Scorpio realm, you can either be like, I'm just gonna, fret and gnaw and gnash about it, and I'm gonna be angry and I'm rageful and I'm gonna attack. Or we can go, oh, thank you for that wake-up call. Now I can start to move in the direction of how that thing, that person, whatever it is, makes me feel. It's just helping you clarify your desires. So don't beat yourself up about it. Listen to it. Yeah. And there's something about desire as well that is so important. I think that a lot of times in spiritual speak, or we're like, oh, we have to overcome our own personal desires, and we have to work towards aspiration for the group. And that is true. That is true. But I don't think we can minimize what we desire. I think we have to listen to it, because I think there's passion contained in there. And so desire is a huge clue to like feeling your freedom, feeling your fullest expression. So I want you to also be able to name your desire. I'm gonna actually read you one more poem about desire. It's a short poem, and it is a poem that I wrote relatively recently. So I just want you to feel into desire now as a part of Scorpio, because it's gonna be, these are breadcrumbs, these are clues for you, okay? It's called Asking for Everything. No one, through no fault of no one's own, ever taught me to ask precisely for what I want. No one, and certainly not my very self, gave me permission to unleash my need. No one, and could I even hear, whispered that my desire contained new worlds. No one, and could I even see, nodded yes to my buried yearning. This is not a love poem. This is a revelation. Finally, I see you've been waiting for me to want more and to ask you for it, to ask you for everything. What if you, your very self, have been waiting for yourself to ask you for everything? Do you know, like, it's permission to ask. It's permission to follow desire. It's permission, where Scorpio is in the same houses that you have tests, there the desire lies too. There the hunger lies. Yeah? Good, I'm glad you like that poem. You're sweet, Matt. That brilliant poet. Yes, I mean, there the hunger lies. And how can we listen to ourselves? How can we listen more deeply to the hunger? Scorpio is hungry. Scorpio is, it's not nice. Scorpio isn't pleasant. Scorpio isn't nice. Scorpio isn't like, well, let's just go for a trot in the carriage. Scorpio is like, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I want to transform. I do not want my life to just stay in the same rhythm. I want to be reborn again and again. And we get so ashamed of what we want or what we desire. And first, before we can do our great work in the world, we have to acknowledge our own little sweet desires, and we have to feed them and nourish them and love them and tend to them. And then, of course, we're free, and then from freedom we can give. Yeah. Natalie says, dealing with death, depression, grief, how to be vulnerable and open with others, not feeling comfortable confiding in others or feeling part of a group, how to let go of control. Scorpio, 11th, 12th, 1st, and right. Yeah, there we go, Natalie. And you and Matt have the same thing. So, that's a huge thing with Scorpio is, can I trust you? And one of the greatest exercises of Scorpio is, I offer you my open hand. I'm gonna open. I'm gonna crack open the door. I'm gonna crack open the door and take a breath. And I'm gonna crack open the door, take a breath, and actually dare to tell a truth to you about myself. And it's gonna be scary and vulnerable, but I'm gonna do it. These tiny practices, that's what has to happen with Scorpio. Tiny practices. But have you recently precisely asked for what you want? Have you recently given yourself permission to have needs? Have you recently whispered your desires that actually contain new worlds for yourself? Have you said yes to yourself, or have you beat yourself up for what you want or what you're not doing? Yeah. So again, in our chart, let's even leave the chart for a second and say this. During Scorpio season, you can summon the power of Mars to strengthen and go after what you want. Simultaneously, you can summon the power of Pluto to end patterns that aren't serving you and to surrender. It's funny. It's a paradox, because you're going after what you want with Mars, but you also have to keep resetting and trusting that something greater is at work. It can't just be, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. You have to go after it, but it's like this dance. It's a dance in Scorpio. Yes. Oh my goodness. As you're talking about trust, I realized my arms and legs were crossed. Exactly, Lori. Well, I remember being in a workshop once where there was a woman who was completely collapsed and also sat like this. And her back was just, and she sat like that for a long time. And the retreat facilitator came over and just like put her hand on her heart and like sat her up and stood there with her as she opened and unclenched her arms, and she just stood there with her. And this woman actually had waves of nausea because it was actually a physical response to being open in that way. And she, had to keep going back. She'd go back to that place, but then find a way to strengthen the muscle. And so that's another thing that we can think about together during this month is, what muscles do I want to strengthen? Like, what muscle do I want to strengthen this month? And you can strengthen the muscle of vulnerability. You can strengthen the muscle of surrender. You can strengthen the muscle of forgiveness, and the way you strengthen a muscle is just to practice and to let it quiver. Yeah. So ask me some questions. What is on your mind? What are you thinking as a result of this hour plus together? What are you, what's in your heart? What's come up? Is it, for some of you, something might come up that's like, I am furious. You might have presenced something in yourself that's just like more there. Yeah. Or you might feel softer and exhaled, or you might be trying to refine a question that you're holding. So how do you practice trust so you can fully let go? Breath. Breath is number one, I think, because when we are not trusting, we are closed and clenched and cautious and not allowing the full inflow and outflow. So sometimes we can just change something physically, which changes the inner landscape and changes the way that we think about something. So also practicing trust is, what can you share with somebody that feels vulnerable but doesn't totally expose you and leave you raw and naked? What small thing can you offer that grows the muscle, right? What truth can be told that you were like, I said that, it was safe, that's a touchstone, now I can try something, now I can try the next step of that. I shared something that I felt that I would normally keep to myself. That's a big thing with Scorpio. That's another big question that I want you to ask yourself is like, what am I being intensely private about, and why? Why am I scared to share this? Why? Sometimes obviously, sometimes it's incredibly important to be secret and to keep the secrets and to be loyal. But what are you being secret or cautious about that's to your detriment? That's a big, important question. What do you feel like I shouldn't share that, or I don't want to share that, or I don't want them to know that? Right? Ask yourself that question. Does anybody else have thoughts about how to practice trust? Or any other questions that are coming up for you? Where do we look in the chart for what can soften, ease this intensity? Sun, South Node, Mercury, Neptune, and Venus in Scorpio. Okay, yeah. So one of the things that you can do, Amy, always, and this is just a good reason that you all should know the polarities, is you can always call in the polarity for Scorpio. So I feel like we always need to be working with the intensity of the sign that we're present in, but you have to work with the polarity. So for you, you'll call in the energy of Taurus, which is the sign opposite Scorpio. And frankly, let's always work with both energies, always, because Taurus brings soothing, quieting, beautiful, rhythmic, manifesting energy. It grounds the Scorpio energy. It quiets things down so further transformation can occur. So the simplest thing I would say to you is you don't even have to look in your own chart. You can just call in the energy of Taurus, and you can call in the energy of Venus, which rules Taurus. And Venus has to seduce the Mars warrior, Venus, within ourselves, or Venus, the soul, has to quiet the Mars personality or nourish the Mars personality. So call in the indestructible beauty, nature, rhythm, breath, embodiment of Taurus. Okay. Caitlin says, currently working on how to negotiate the dance between action, tenacity, and fighting the good fight for agency of one's life, career, self-expression with faith, trust in others, pace and approach in partnerships of art, and dance together and not get tripped up in the process. Yeah, it's exactly the paradox, right? How do I assert and move forward and yet still leave room for the magic to happen? And it's resetting constantly. And it's setting it free constantly, and not knowing constantly, but not collapsing into oneself. The collapse into the self is the tricky part. You have to use the Mars in a vitalizing, aspiring way. Yeah. Let's read a few more of these. Claire says, trust. I actually feel a lot of peace knowing that this is the work right now. I'm writing a book about parenting and decision making, which I feel like I should hide. And surrendering my false martyrdom around always putting family kids first and abandoning myself. Knowing that this is the work to fight abandoning myself. Beautiful, Claire. To ask, what if I don't abandon myself in this moment? That is an excellent Scorpio question too. Like, yeah, what if I don't abandon myself in this moment? And what I like what you wrote at the very beginning here, just about that you feel peace knowing that this is the work right now. Guys, the work right now is deep. The work right now is internal. The work right now involves wrestling. It's not a heady thing. It's a whole-bodied wrestling, feeling, surrendering thing. Like, so knowing and knowing that it's a negative polarity, that it's a divine feminine sign, that it's a more internal time. You know how, at least in the northern hemisphere, how fall feels, right? It's like, oh, you just want to turn inward and have your hot beverage, right? And watch the leaves fall. I mean, isn't it even interesting, and sort of the leaves falling and Scorpio and death and letting go and all of that. Okay, let's read one more. Sarah, this is not a question, but today was hugely helpful. I've been struggling a lot with my current job and it's running its course. Lots of fears over leaving and doing something new, and first finding something new and the struggle that brings. I wrote a ton down today about how I shouldn't change who I am to fit another mold. Good for you. And that I will be exactly for someone. Yes, all so good. And, you know, look, I'm aware that today we kind of like stirred the cauldron. Like we threw lots of things in, and we're in the thick of Scorpio. And it's not even that we're meant to be clarifying a lot right now. We're meant to be living in the unknown, meant to be living in the questions, right? We wanted to, we needed to stir it up today as we entered Scorpio. Yeah. I mean, it's just so interesting. Like so my daughter today was supposed to take a test. I'll tell you the story of our morning. My daughter was supposed to be at an important test at 8 a.m. this morning, and woke up early and discovered that she had lost her calculator. And so actually was not allowed to take the test because we couldn't get a calculator. And so we were all running around the house this morning like, calculator, can't find the calculator, drive. Will they give us a calculator? They won't give us a calculator, right? So, but then all, her own reaction to that was so amazing and fascinating. And like, of course, shame, and of course, like wobbliness, and all of our reactions to it. And I was like, hello, Scorpio. Hello, Scorpio. How are we going to surrender in this moment? How are we going to tend to the healing of this moment? How are we going to name what really hurts? I mean, I said, are you sad? Are you mad? Are you sad with yourself? Are you mad at me? It's like, can we name it? This is so important in the Scorpio world. So, I'm sure you guys all have a Scorpio story. Like, even if you just woke up with tremendous anxiety, it presences itself, right? Okay. I want to read more. Sharon, I had trust as a keynote for the year, and whenever I got weird, I said trust to myself over and over again. One word can make a huge difference. One word with an inhale and an exhale. Laura says, I think Scorpio embodies the only way out is through, trying to embrace that same mindset and trusting others lately. Just do it, and those who deserve it will become clear. Beautiful. Yep, that is so Scorpio. The only way out is through. Oh, very good. Michelle, I think Scorpio gets a bad rap for being hard and tense. I would say that the protection mechanism is protecting and the sensitive and soft depth of Scorpio. 100%, Michelle. There's no way that I am only saying that Scorpio is bad and hard and intense. It is one of the most beautiful signs of the zodiac because it wants to heal and it wants to transform. And yes, there are times that you have to tend to the softness and tend to the vulnerability. Absolutely, 100%. But I also believe in, honoring that loss is hard and depression is hard and letting go is hard and letting go of control is hard, and that all shows up during the Scorpio season. Yeah. And Liz says, my work is preparing to launch my daughter to college without being an anxious mess. Yes. Really helpful to allow ourselves to soften and cry at the start of the session. Those poems. I'm glad. There's a lot here. I'm going to read Mandy's out loud. I guess I'm sitting with asking myself how I allow my heart to break and stay open in relation to pursuing my path, calling, disappointing my parents and myself and their hopes, expectations, plans for me, and trying to provide a livelihood for myself, Scorpio, in the 10th, 11th house, Mars in the 2nd, while doing it. Yeah, I mean, what you've just done there, Mandy, is you've just said it. You've just said it out loud, and saying it out loud makes a huge difference. And you have to let your heart break, and you have to let your parents break their hearts, and you can't do anything about that. And you have to sit in the no until you know the yes. You have to sit in the this is not for me until you know where you want to channel it. And it is, and you have to sit in the heartbreak until you hear the quiet whisper that starts to lead you in the new direction. And it will come. And yes, I will send the recording today, for today. So good. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. It of course makes a huge difference on my end to hear how it's landing for you. And what I would like for those of you that are returning on the 7th, I would like for you to think about your desire. I would like for you to think about your desire as the seed for the gift you want to give. I would like for you to ask the question about, where can I let go? And maybe ask the same question that was asked earlier, is like, how can I practice trusting that something greater is going to come through? How can I just show up? And maybe practice trusting is like sitting for 2 minutes with your hands out, breathing deeply, and just wondering what's going to come through to touch those hands, or who's going to come forward to touch those hands. Like, you have your own ways of practicing trust and practicing letting go and practicing desire and practice strengthening desire. And Claire, let me just answer your question. Could you share again what Mars provides, energize, opens up? Mars is the energy of vitality, the energy of the warrior, the energy of pursuing desire, the energy of, but sometimes we fight for lesser things and we want to fight for the big things. Mars wants to be channeled for the big causes. So we want to make sure we're using Mars to vitalize a particular area and help us like go after it with bravery and strength and courage. Next time we're going to talk a lot about courage, and we'll talk about Mars. But in the 2nd house, Mars says, I will use my vitality towards what I value. I will use my power to grow my garden. I will use my power to bring in the resources that I need to bring in. That's, we should talk about that next time, because we barely touched on resources and Scorpio. But Scorpio has so much to do with how we use our money and our resources and how we can use it for the good. And how resources bring power, and power can be channeled for the good. All right, my loves. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to say thank you. I will be sending you this video and audio within a couple of hours. And if you're not signed up for the next two and would like to, you can do that as well. And I'm just grateful for our time together today. And also, if there are follow-up questions where you feel like, ooh, I need to know that, reach out to us, and we will make sure we address those, okay? And big thank yous all around. I'm so grateful for you. All right, much love. See you soon.